Hello, everyone. It's been some time since my last update, and I wanted to share with you what's going on here on my end, as well as what's going on in the world and why you might really want to be paying attention right now and taking some action. First, on my part, it's been probably over a month since the last video. I've been paying close attention to COMEX and what's been going on with the silver market and the various warnings that I discussed about that. But the real purpose of this video and all videos is to give you a heads up and hopefully inspire you to prepare. I've been talking about the collapse that's coming from silver quite a bit, and that's been the main focus because it is the most predictable. It is the most obvious mathematical outcome. But preparing enough food is going to be vital. And I've been saying, prepare, at least a month of food. You might think about getting a little bit more than that. And not just for the silver. There's any number of things that are converging, forces that are converging. This is typically what happens when empires collapse, is that it's not just one cause, but many different things converge at the same time. For similar reasons, basically, the collapse is due to mismanagement, ineptitude, and corruption. And that ineptitude, that corruption, the ignorance that leads to all of it, the selfishness that leads to all of it, tends to show up on multiple fronts, not just one. So with regard to food, I've been saying, at least have the amount of food stored up that would be, well, that we're normally told to have from FEMA during when there's any hurricane or earthquake, have at least a month's worth of food. But I don't believe that that's going to be sufficient. And if you can afford it, a year's worth of food. And of course, that means that you've got to have water too. You need a water source, at least a source of water that you could purify, a creek or a river nearby, or a well. But if you have a well, put a hand pump on it. And of course, if you have a hand pump on it and the electricity goes out, you can still get water. And you can use that water to cook your food and any number of other things that you would want it to bathe and so on and so forth. Hand pumps are not that expensive. If you have the means and the money to get a well, maybe do it. Start it now. Hopefully the system will hold up long enough for you to get it installed. That could provide water for not just your family, but the entire neighborhood. Maybe a number of people can walk. And in the old days, and it still happens in a lot of non-modern countries where people walk for an hour, with buckets and put them on their head and they walk back. I mean, that's some of that's going to be happening. But let's let's look at the whole picture and kind of in a little bit of a detail. I'm not going to go too much into detail, but it's just enough to hopefully get you to see things. So we're at war with Iran, and that war began at the same, basically late February, February 28th, I believe the first bombs were dropped. But that war is not going well. And the very predictable thing that anybody who really knows about Iran or even the Middle East could tell you or would tell you would tell you was going to happen, which was the closing or blockading of the Strait of Hormuz, as well as the attacks on all of the Gulf states from Iran as a retribution for Israeli and American attacks. That was all very predictable. That our government acts as if it wasn't predictable, that it was such a surprise that they would block the Strait of Hormuz, shows either incredible ineptitude or just a willingness to lie. That's an unabashed willingness to lie. This has been predictable for 30, 40 years that they would block the Strait of Hormuz. So the effect of blocking the Strait of Hormuz is that about 20% of the world's oil, mostly heavy grade and mid grade oil is not able to get to its destinations. Very important. Japan, for example, is almost entirely dependent upon oil from the Middle East. So they needed to get special permission from Trump to get the oil from Russia instead. Now, the United States blew up the pipelines from Russia to Europe, two of the three, if I recall. So Europe, of course, was getting a lot of their oil from Russia. Now they need to get it from the United States. And maybe that's part of the plan. Maybe Trump is thinking if we get Iran to block the Strait of Hormuz, what that will do is make it so our oil is in greater demand and that we are in charge essentially of the world's oil supply and also natural gas. So about 20% of the world's oil goes through the Strait of Hormuz. And if I recall, about 30% of the world's natural gas, also vitally important, goes through the Strait of Hormuz. But there's another element to especially be attentive to right now. Fertilizer. About 25% or so of the world's fertilizer comes through the Strait of Hormuz, chemical fertilizer. And that's been blocked since late February. We're almost all the way through spring. So whoever didn't get that fertilizer didn't get it into the ground. Now, this is at the same time that the world is going into El Nino, at the same time that we have record ocean heat, at the same time that at least the United States, which is a massive net exporter of food, staple crops, soy, rice, corn, etc., is in a drought, and that drought is worsening. And so if you pay attention to small or medium, like non-industrial, non-corporate farmers, what they're saying is the drought began very early. We didn't have a winter, or we didn't have enough of a winter. And we've just gone early into summer, a month and a half or so early into summer. Same thing happened here in Oregon. We were seeing trees and plants that would normally not flower until, say, mid-June, flowering in April. I mean, a month and a half, 2 months early. And so we knew we were going to have a very early summer. So what we're looking at is a constellation of pressures. One, it appears we're going to have the hottest year in recorded human history this year due to the stored ocean heat. The El Nino effect is going to cause a tremendous drought in the United States in all likelihood, maybe the worst we've ever had, while at the same time changing weather patterns all around the world. India might not get their monsoon season. Japan might not get its June heavy monsoon season. All of Asia might not have that, which is vital for their food production. We don't have the fertilizer. So crops didn't go into the ground when they needed to. Fertilizer didn't go into the ground when it needed to. The ground is already dried out. We're not expecting to get the rain. And this is just all around the world. Now, how it will actually play out, we cannot be certain. Will the weather just suddenly change and we'll just get maybe everything will just suddenly turn out well. But that doesn't appear even remotely to be the case. And we can only work with what we can see actually happening. So we're taking an estimate of what the future is likely to look like. So at the same time that we're going to have what appears to be a massive drought and food disruption worldwide, at the very same time that that's happening, that itself is enough to cause a global famine. The price of oil is skyrocketing, which means the expense for farming, both planting, harvesting, and then of course shipping, and the expense of everything goes up. Everything depends on oil. Everything depends on natural gas. Everything depends on energy. and energy is constricted right now. So what we're going to see is the price of everything rising dramatically, food especially. If you can get it, it's going to be so much more expensive than it would otherwise have been. And that's due to the shortage of food combined with the price of oil and other energy sources rising through the roof. While at the same time, our government is going to be staving off both the private sector, trying to stave off this private sector lending system collapse, like BlackRock, Blackstone, Blue Owl. They're having a collapse right now due to very poor lending practices that are not regulated. At the same time, the silver thing's happening, and so they're going to need the government's going to try and bail that out, which is all that's going to cause is hyperinflation. And so the value of your money is going down at the same time the value of or the demand for food is going to go up while there's a tremendous shortage. So what we're looking at is prices that you might not be able to imagine in the near future, assuming you can get the food. The takeaway, prepare, prepare. Water, food. I wouldn't want to be in a city when this is going to play out. Even if the silver thing that I've been talking about wasn't the case, even if that wasn't unfolding, which it is, I wouldn't want to be in a city because we're going to be seeing a tremendous amount of unrest, even if the electricity could stay on, which it probably won't be able to. We're looking at a very, very unstable situation. So food, we need a storage of food. If I were in a situation where I needed to store food, I would probably be buying like canned sardines, canned salmon, tuna, like some kind of like you can have a can a day for your basic protein. If you get a whole fish like sardine or anchovies or something like that, it's got the whole body, basically has all the nutrition that you need to survive. Dried eggs, whole dried eggs, if you can digest them, you can live on pretty much just eggs alone if you needed to. Um, Dried potatoes, dried milk. If you can afford it, you might get a year, you might get a couple of years of food that is dried and stored, and that the type of food that will last: rice, beans, and be prepared with water. Like you've got a water purification system and you've got a source of water that you can readily access that can be purified. Take it very seriously. Without these things, you're going to uh, be in a very, very, very unimaginably difficult situation. Yes, it's true. People could come and steal your food and take your water. So what? If you don't have the food and water to begin with, it's better to at least have a chance if you did have the food and the water, right? Now, because of the heat wave, because of the drought, I live in Oregon, the western half of Oregon, dense forest. I've been working. I know that once the system starts to wobble, once this summer comes along, there's a very high chance we're going to have, due to the drought and due to the strain, assuming we have a collapse, we're going to have wildfires here on the coast this year, in all likelihood that it'll be like unprecedented. Whether we will have the ability to put those fires out will depend on if our economic system is still functioning. If it's not, we're not going to be able to put the fires out. I have to look honestly at my property. This is what I've been doing for the last month and a half, is just as doing as much work as possible to create fire breaks around the property, mowing, burning off dead wood, cutting lower branches. Um, we just have to do the work that we have to do. The priority is like, don't let the fire run over our, don't let the fire run over us. And it still could here, even with all the work that we've done. And the reason is that fire season started on May 15th, which is well over a month earlier than it usually starts. And though we were expecting that to happen because of the drought, it was even a bit earlier than we thought. And so we're rushing to get a lot of work done that you can't do once the fire season. It comes in phases. There's certain at level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. At level 1, there's certain things you can't do, like burn outdoors. But once it progresses, then you can't mow, you can't chainsaw, you can't do any number of other things. You can't take a vehicle into, off roads to cut the wood that we need for our winter heating. A lot of chainsaw has to happen. A lot of gathering has to happen, and all that needs to happen right now, which is what's really keeping me very busy and why I haven't been able to update you with these videos. This clearly is a non-scripted one. I just can't wait any longer. I've got to share this information with you. There's just from all directions ample evidence that if you're not preparing now, you're not giving yourself much of a chance to move forward. I will encourage you again to prepare, to start storing food. If you've got the land, even a small amount of land that you can farm, that you can grow things, start growing. Jerusalem's artichokes, they'll make you fart, but they'll give you calories, they'll give you minerals. And most people will not recognize these are like sunchokes, Jerusalem's artichokes, not regular artichokes. They're just like the kind of sunflower that produces a tuber that is edible, sort of like a potato, mostly made of inulin. It's a postbiotic that will probably make you fart till you get used to digesting it, but it's all right. There are worse problems. Some people love the taste, some people don't, but it's better than starvation. And when you're hungry enough, everything tastes great. Growing potatoes in bags, like you can just get, compost bags, 50-pound compost bags, and cut some holes, maybe 5 holes in the top, and put a potato in each of those holes. Water it, and that whole bag will fill up with potatoes. Put it in a situation where it's going to get partial sun. If you're in a milder climate where the sun isn't too harsh, maybe full sun is fine. Here it gets too harsh, it will kill the potatoes especially probably once mid-June comes around. But let's say you got 20 bags of compost, if you can get them still, and you bought some seed potatoes and you filled each of those things and you kept them, moderately watered. You don't want to waterlog them, they'll rot the tubers, but this is very, very lightly moist, soft situation. You might be able to produce enough potatoes to feed your family. Now, it's a strange thing, but you can actually survive almost completely just on potatoes. They've got protein, they've got magnesium, you can almost survive just on potatoes. If you had potatoes and eggs and, you ate some dandelion leaves for vitamins and minerals, you'll be able to survive. It might not be the tastiest, most enjoyable long-term diet, but it would get you through. Let's shift things a bit. The goal here, what we're moving into, the change that's happening, could be described as an apocalypse. Now, it's important that word is very loaded, but what it really means is a revelation. A revelation. But revelations they can only occur when something breaks down, false things break down, and that reveals truth. So an apocalypse is both something that can be very fearful because you're going to experience a tremendous change and breakdown. We're going through that right now. Part of the apocalypse that we're going through is the mass ineptitude, corruption, at all levels of our societies, it's important that we see that and we see why it's happening. It's everybody looking out for themselves and not taking into account the larger picture. Fundamentally, a lack of genuine empathy or concern for the whole, for others, a lack of love, a lack of integrity. Vital that we begin the path of integrity within our bodies. This isn't just about telling the truth and working hard. This is about creating a trusting environment within your body, between the mind and the body, that then flows out to our family, our friends, our neighbors. If you've been telling yourself, this year, I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to eat healthier, I'm going to start exercising, but you don't do it, your body's intelligence will not trust the mind. Why? Because clearly your aims, your goals, the things you say you don't follow through on. They're not trustworthy. If you lack impulse control, which means you're not able to control your temper, or you can't stop, reaching in and grabbing that chocolate or candy, or, you have issues controlling impulses, you're not trustworthy. You're not trustworthy even to your own body. You're not trustworthy even to your own mind, though you may have fooled yourself into thinking you are. What it means is you don't have discipline, and you do not have the inner strength to stop yourself from doing harmful things, untrustworthy things, things that lead you to not respect yourself. Nor are you capable of setting an aim and following through. You have not earned self-respect. You have not earned body-mind unification. What's happening we can say spiritually for humanity is we're going through this process. It's going to break down the falsehoods. It's going to break down the lies. It's going to break down the corruption. It's going to expose the weaknesses. The invitation is that you create a unified system of love, respect, acceptance, appreciation, and trust between your mind and your body, so that the body's intelligence can come forward. It's going to help you with going forward. And the body does have intelligence. It's not the same thing as your logic. And it's also not the same thing as instinct. But that will not emerge unless you develop a truly trusting relationship within. And if it's genuine, that will naturally flow out into truly trusting relationships with those people around you. Start speaking and behaving in ways that are genuinely constructive and uplifting. Lie less. Stop lying. Tell the truth. Do it compassionately. Maybe no longer tolerate people that are tearing themselves and other people down. No longer time for messing around like that. We need to build strong teams. We need to completely trust each other. If you're or someone in your group is putting trust at risk, you might distance yourself. Because when times get tough, you need to know that that person's got your back, and they need to know that you've got theirs. Everybody needs to know that we're here to uplift each other, to make each other stronger, better, more capable people. This, in truth, is just the only way that humanity has ever thrived on all levels. In many cases, we've thrived economically, but we've decayed spiritually. This is not sufficient anymore. We must thrive spiritually. And when I mean spiritual, I don't necessarily mean something that's so abstract. I mean like the feeling space within has to be strong and vital and vibrant, aware. And in order for that to happen, we need genuine love, respect, acceptance, appreciation, and trust within this space that overflows into the world around us. That's the revelation, in a sense. But it's an earned revelation. And not everybody will earn it. Now is your chance to start preparing. Prepare to help your neighbors help their neighbors. And that means getting the atmosphere right within you, becoming strong, no longer tolerating excuses and weaknesses within you, attitudinal excuses and weaknesses within you. If you're physically sick or ill, you're going to have to find ways to work around that or work through it or get stronger. But that's not primarily the type of weakness I'm talking about. If you get the spiritual element right, you'll be optimized for physical recovery. Doesn't mean it's guaranteed. But there are things you can do that make the situation more likely to improve, and there are things you can do that make things worse. There are two skills that these are the two primary skills that all people really need to know now: how to stop making things worse and how to make things better. Most of us don't have any idea how to make things better, not really. I mean, we have ideas, but they don't work. So we oftentimes have to just first learn how to not make things worse. And that's impulse control. That's discipline, self-discipline. That's being able to stop yourself from doing things that are harmful. Not smoke that cigarette, you know, not drink that glass of, you know, whiskey or whatever, that extra, not take this unnecessary risk, not say that thing that's going to undermine trust, not lash out, or certainly do less of those things, not waste resources. And then the other is develop the capacity to mentor yourself and to make things better than they would otherwise be. If you've got those two skills, the attitude that supports those two skills, you're way ahead of the game. I mean, that's really what it is about. You take those two skills and you start observing the world situation. If you develop those abilities and you see the world situation, naturally you will take effective action. You will start researching what needs to be researched. You'll start researching actually effective farming techniques that are sustainable and don't require external inputs. Yes, we're going to be using human manure. That means human feces that has been properly processed such that it becomes fertilizer. This is just what people did in the past, and you got to do it carefully, or you can end up with cholera or any other diseases that come from feces. The types of plants that you can plant in your area or wherever you're going to be that will provide a ready source of calories and minerals and vitamins, and maybe even some essential fats. What those crops are will depend where you live and the environment that you're in, the amount of sunlight that you have. It's very specific to you. I've been putting videos up from other channels on my channel. I think it's like survival techniques or something like that. If you look in my playlists, you'll find that. And there are a number of videos that I've put in there already, and I'll keep adding over time. Pardon me for being slow on that, but really you need the attitude that you're going to search this out for yourself. If you can take a survival class, a survival course, and you've got time to do it, what are you waiting for? Now's the time. Get yourself right with yourself. There are certain things that you carry within you, certain regrets, certain things that you've done that have undermined trust with yourself. Stop denying the fact that you did it. Admit it to yourself. Look yourself straight in the mirror. Get up close and be totally honest about whatever that behavior was. Because if you're still protecting it, if you're still denying it, what that means is you're still in the mindset that would repeat it again under the same circumstances. And that means you cannot trust yourself. You must be able to trust yourself deeply. No bullshit. You have to be completely transparent to yourself in this dimension. You have to know that under pressure, you're going to behave in ways that are honorable, that lead you to respect yourself deeply, to accept yourself deeply, to even appreciate yourself deeply, to trust yourself deeply. Stop doing things that lead you to distrust yourself, to disrespect yourself, to not love yourself or appreciate yourself, and do things that lead you toward all of those: love, respect, acceptance, appreciation, and trust. All of these facets are in part earned. Many people think they respect themselves, but that's not genuine respect. It's pride or arrogance. These aren't legitimate. They're false respect. I'm not talking about self-esteem. That's just your ego's narrative. You comparing yourself to others, I'm a great person, or whatever. That's nonsense. I'm talking about something much more fundamental than that. Something that emerges during hard times, when you're exhausted, when you can't hold up the lies anymore, how you really feel inside, the level of trust you really have emerges. And for most people, right now, under pressure, they're going to fall apart. Right now, garden your inner space so that when the pressure really gets tight, you are a cornerstone, or a foundation stone might be better. A foundation stone. Others can look to you. Others can depend upon you. And you can help them become dependable as well. And with that, I wish you well.